time. The first time was in 2021 when the COVID forced us to cease doing what we're doing right now, but we weren't totally deterred because we did do a Zoom presentation. So welcome back for your second reading for Beach Bards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. That was such a wonderful reading and introduction, Tony. I'd like to thank you and your team for the amazing work you do, Beach Bards. It's been years now and the work has been going strong. The publication of the anthology, which I see on the table there, it's so beautiful to see it again. And then to all of you here this evening to celebrate creativity, poetry. It's a huge part of life, daily living. It doesn't have to be anything grand. Nothing grand needs to happen for us to read or write poetry. Poetry is in the quotidian, in the ordinariness of life. When we wake up and say hello, and go about, seeing the skies and the river and the fish, even fishing. As I was coming here, I saw some boys with a fishing line and say, oh, that's a board right there. So we don't have to wait for anything very grand, to happen, to write and enjoy poetry. It is the sort of beauty of language, the way in which we stretch language to the very limits of our imagination and enjoy. So it's such a beautiful thing to be here. Each time I'm introduced on stage in a place like this, I try to teach the audience how to say my name, because when I came, I met a wonderful lady who said, how do you say your name? I said, Echezonachukwu. She just gave up. She said, oh my God, I don't know if I can say this. I said, well, everybody calls me Eche for short, but I can teach you. So you can imagine the amazing work that Tony did this evening, just saying my full name, first name. And by the way, Tony, this is the very first time I've heard you say my full name like that. Because it's always Eche. We talk all the time, exchange emails and talk. So it's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad to share my work. Echezonachukwu. It looks long, but you can do it in three, actually. Pa, pa, pa. Echezonachukwu. Echezonachukwu Nduka. So, Echezonachukwu. Yes, Echezonachukwu. You can do it in three. What it means in my language from Nigeria is, do not forget God. It is actually a Christian name in my native language. Where I come from, we do not give names lightly. It is very serious. Names have very deep meanings, aspirations, sort of prayers for you to set you on your journey of life. So when my parents said, Echezonachukwu, do not forget God, it was not just a prayer for me, but a sort of guide to see me through the journey of life. Today, here as a poet, since there is no piano, maybe I'll have some piano in my poetry. Antoinette is right, as a musician and as a scholar. Playing piano music inspires my writing. I don't know if I've written anything. Some critics have accused me of not being able to write anything outside of music. I don't know if they are right. So, but I tend to look at the world through the lens of music, and it helps me in my thinking and in my imagination. So without further ado, we'll get right into it, because I believe we'll have a great evening. We'll have a fellow poet, very accomplished, who will be coming up after me, and all of you here, maybe reading as well. So I'm not going to take the whole of our time. I believe we're going to have a beautiful evening. I'd like to start with a poem from my second poetry collection, Waterman, which was published in the first wave, the Beach Bards Anthology. I read it in 2021 during our session when we were celebrating the publication, and I'd like to read it now again. This sort of reenactment, for me, it's very important, because when we were trying to celebrate that publication, it was shortly after COVID, and we couldn't meet, it was just on Zoom. So now I'd like to do that now in person. I believe there's a difference between the virtual connection and being in person. So the poem is titled Lone Dancer, inspired by my imagination of someone who's out in the back, just dancing, taking up the world around her. Lone Dancer. On rainy days, I watch through my window a dancer swirling around the park alone. Arms thrown to the sky in measured rhythms. She has made friends with the rain, hips throbbing sideways to mark every drop with lightness. I wish to dance in response to solitude, to trace the labyrinths of absence in a world full of names and rhythms. At night, I dream myself to sleep and wake up as rain, seeking to bless swaying bodies. What I find instead is a mailman at the door and my malamute wagging her tail, waiting for morning embrace. That was London. The next poem I would like to read, this one particularly because of this place, CICT. It's titled Boardwalk. This was inspired by the boardwalk in Atlantis. I used to live in New Jersey, Maceland, and so once in a while I'll go up to Atlantis City, go to boardwalk, look around, get to the beach with my friends. So as a poet, I like to just observe, look around. Of course, that's where our inspiration comes from for the most part. So just see what's going on in life and then write about it. So this poem is titled Boardwalk. Notice the gate of tourists on a summer lawn. Catwalks on wood are for onlookers, who, like the ocean, rises and ebbs for sanity. A young couple across the casino calls out to their daughter, Lisa, whose dance steps betray the beat of the passing music. Love-struck partners keys to the silence of passers-by. No, the one who kneels to propose draws cheers and applause. Phone cameras record the new face as viral online content. Near the main pathway to the beach, a gray-bearded man sits alone, cross-legged, eyes fixed on the feet of strangers, as if he is keeping inventory of shoes and sizes. If shoes could talk about those who wear them, the man would have his whole body full of stories, so that at dusk, when the beach reclaims her song and stalls close in honor of the arriving morn, he would have gained more weight just by sitting at the boardwalk. I'd like to read a short poem titled Conservatory, in which I imagine my life as a piano. Conservatory, of course, because of my training, part of my training as a musician and classical pianist. Conservatory. Beethoven's music flows out of your room like water under a bridge. We talk about strangers sharing common melodies and paying respect to genius bonds. You want to talk about notes, an ill-fitting song title, and a cadenza racing through scores like a painter's dream. But someone is dying in your room, and it is not music. I say how prayers mean nothing in the absence of ears. Broken lovers are not always blue. Some are crimson, with honey and a new list of skincare ointments. I cannot make a sonata into lotions for skins dry like mine. Piano music wakes the dead only in concert halls. I am rehearsing my next life as a piano, a 9-foot concert grand on stage with a name so long the pianist will need extra fingers. So maybe one more poem from this collection, and I will read from my most recent book, Jazz Negotiations. So I read a poem which is a bit long. It's titled Transition. Now this poem is very important to me because I received a lot of support when I was putting this book together. Tony wrote, was one of those who wrote the plot for this, and she made a reference to that poem. It's titled Transition. So I'd like to read from it. Transition. What the old teacher said to me, young philosopher, cannot be set to music. I am in a mansion full of books, drowning in a pool of voices and theories trapped in pages. I can no longer vouch for my innocence in unguarded hours. Even Epiphany, my piano, like twin sisters at dagger point, weeps for this loss of sanctity. My teacher's testimonials suggest that I am hyperactive in more than 3 words. Once, seated in a room of debaters, I quoted 2 personal encounters. An aunt took a pose and asked for a quick portrait. After a careful gaze, I painted my mother instead. She looked at the painting, held back tears, and said blood only conquers death in little drops. I did not agree with her, nor what makes human blood play tricks on the soul of artists. When I tried to paint her tears, she held my hand. Next encounter. I was a composer commissioned for a string quartet. After days of hunger strike in the woods, bonding with nocturnal silence and daytime groans, I filled my scores with notes untamed. And when the musicians played, their strings broke and the audience threw roses on stage, not as kudos to players, but as farewell to the grand old cello. The instrument was older than the player, the conductor, and the quarter of the audience. On my study desk, I am meditating between characters in a playwright's era, writing agreements and speeches with which the day of peace will be marked. It seems I am planting a tree. At what point should I begin to worry about what fruits it will bear? Would it bear fruit at all? I may not be sure of fruits, but I am sure of poems. It is true that the old teacher once argued that poems are fruits. I disagreed. Poems are poems, I said, and with that came a new baptism. I was dipped in water and wine for good measure. The old teacher's counsel was to go back to the beginning and stop at the end. There is no end, only a beginning, I said. He asked me a question. Who owns language? Native speakers or aliens and newcomers to the tongue? In my room, a different kind of star has fallen. There is no way to tell if daylight has dropped her weapons and desecrated my window panes with whimpering presence. I substitute ash with melons, tasting salt to tell the difference, but my taste buds now exercise rights to protest. What makes a holiday holy? The priest says he cannot tell. He swore to submit to the whims of calendars all his life. The old teacher broods on a badly painted portrait on my wall. I suspect he doesn't know the answer either. In a book I am reading, a man is mourning the absence of grief with rum and incense. I have joined a group of wanderers who have forgotten the joys of living in denial. Here is what is left to happen. The magician's wand will tell onlookers the terrifying secret of the abyss that is its master's bag. The third eye sees what happens in the dark, but the night is too burdened to bear witness. So I will write it down and wait for my turn to testify. Leave me now with nothing but lemons and the silver lampstand. The trick is that there are no new tricks for the twice-beaten theorist. Only letters from ex-students full of questions. The old teacher did assure me that the ultimate answer is yes and no. I'd rather applaud the timpanist for whom drum rolls are thunderclaps. The old teacher knows the pain of philosophizing in winter, knows that snowman in the yard is temporary envoy with nothing new to say. Every winter, the old teacher's daughter becomes an artist. Her snowman looked exactly the same since the past 5 years, and there I was, young philosopher, finding meanings in icy ephemeral beings. These changing seasons will teach me more than I already know. To tell why snowflakes betray the weatherman's forecast is off the scope. All learning is key for survival, says the old teacher. Mine is an ill-fitting pendant, an engine of sorts for repelling fearful vibrations. Oh, harmonic resonance of all unguarded hours, keep me safe in the pages of book I have yet to write. Every passing time wets itself with tears of inactions. Ink flows back to feathers that deserve them. When Bonaventure of the Brazen Retaliators was served a hammerhead at the construction site, he found new love in philosophy, mysteries, and unresolved puzzles weighing down his soul. To him, every new moon sings of a question the world is yet to answer. We may never know with whom the season is at loggerheads, but we know who boards halogens and genes to appease unkind weathers. What the old teacher said to me, young philosopher, may have found a worthy composer. Bespectacled on New Year's Eve, I spend hours on letters and wine from a young king's man. The old teacher's note now rekindles my doubt. Oh, harmonic resonance of all unguarded hours, ride me to the precipice, but rock me back gently to sail across the changing seasons. Thank you. So that was transition. That's one of the longest poems I've written. It's 10 verses. So I'll read maybe 2 poems from Jazz Negotiations, so that I'll give you, the book is there, so that I'll leave you to read the poems yourself. So Jazz Negotiations was inspired by my study and work on Black history. I was reading a lot of James Baldwin, listening to jazz music, and I was inspired to start writing some of the poems in the collection. But at some point I found also that some of the poems were connected to music and environment. We have a branch of study in music called ecomusicology. People may not know, but music performance, or the idea of music, is not detached from the environment. Now we talk about climate change, oh, we need to plant trees, make everywhere green. But the truth is that for every guitar you play, the violins, the piano, the drums, sometimes nature has to die a little for music to happen, particularly live music. Think of the pianos and violin and most of the instruments. These are trees, timber. Some drums are like animal skin. Sometimes animals have to die, or skins of dead animals. The point I'm trying to make is that music as we know it is not separated from the environment. Nature has to die a little for music to happen, right? So the wood and all of these natural materials that are used in the making of instrument, it's like taking away from nature a little bit. So music is connected to nature in a way, right? So I find that a few of the poems I wrote spoke to that as well, but the collection is basically about music, about history, about my Africa, where I come from, West Africa, Nigeria, and it's sort of contrasted on how it relates to my new world of America. So it's still a very new collection, published in March, so I'll leave you to read most of the poems from the collection, but maybe I'll just read 2 short ones so that we can continue the program. I'll read just 2 poems, one on music and the other on environment, and I'll close it at that. The musical poem I'll read, of course, I don't know, how many of you know a musician called B.B. King? Hughes, yes, so great audience. So yes, yes, of course he was such a legend. So I was watching a YouTube video of his performance. When I looked at it, I said, oh, I'm going to write a poem on just this performance. So I titled the poem, B.B. King Plucks the String. He is live in Montreux, suited in blue with black bow tie, matching dark shining guitar. What does it mean to play an instrument bearing one's name on the frets for all to feel? Bold rings on both ring fingers, eyes closed, the red plectrum plucks the strings to rhythms punctuated by trumpets. When he shakes his head slowly, we hear melodies trembling, wailing, fans clapping at the drummer's space. The thrill is gone away from me, he sings, and I follow his thrill to the midsection when the volume drops. The mood is somber, low, a kind of death awaiting resurrection. The music gives ear to guitar riffs until little by little, the volume picks up and the drum rolls to a crescendo. King's riffs embracing the crowd. He raises the guitar to the sky as if to say, God, here is my gift. Take us to heaven. I am sold to the screaming of fans facing the legend. What miracle is this? What strings can heal a heart broken in summer? So that was for B.B. King. Now, I'll read one poem on the other side of the collection titled Ecomusicology for Hyro and Jean. These are two professors in my department, the Department of Music at the University of Pennsylvania, who went during my coursework, they introduced us to this idea of ecomusicology. We read a lot of critical text on music and environment. So when I wrote this poem, I thought of them and I decided to dedicate it to them. Ecomusicology. The syllabus will resound what has to die for music to live. Chainsaws are witnesses in the theater of necrology, engines wailing for the lives of trees, roots deep in the earth, nursing wounds for the great sonata set to premiere in halls of note. How innocent must my fingers feel, turning pages of printed scrolls, caressing keys to awaken Schumann's romantic spirit, harmonies hovering above me in protest for the rights of nature. Carved words and strings have read their manifestos year after year. We don't listen. Our preference is symphonic, with melodies made for feet racing towards erosion. The ascendancy of drums has gifted the world new rhythms. Trending dances are mere manifestations, stretched membrane, dry and tuned for effect, as kings of nature's pets serving the pleasure of man. In this instance, dance is dance sibling, unbrothered, rejoicing in the sound of loss. And there sits our beloved drummer, sticks in hand, waiting to take his turn in the jam session. We are all improvisers, adjusting to the change in temperature, reworking roofs and walls, ears plugged with new top songs. In the next 2 decades, summer festivals may happen all year round. These days, I look at trees with guilt, wondering what music they hide in storied branches. Playlists as litany, futile negotiations with a planet turned inwards. A hot winter might hurt a little, but we will dance and make rain fall. How lovely must the earth be, a field of optimists and theorists, lovers and liars, debating the weatherman's forecast. We are umbrella makers now, covering our being